This section, we are going to discuss the pharmacology of heart failure. So, in order to understand various types of drugs used in heart failure, we should know the pathophysiology of heart failure. So, as we all know, the normal function of heart is to pump enough blood so as to maintain cardiac output sufficient to meet the requirements or demands of peripheral tissues. If due to some reason the heart is not able to meet the demands of peripheral tissues, then in that case, the condition is called as heart failure. So if heart fails to maintain the to meet the demands of peripheral tissues, the condition is called as heart failure. Now, heart failure, it can occur whenever there is either underfilling of ventricles. So if there is underfilling of ventricles, ventricles will not be able to pump enough blood, and that will result in heart failure. It can also occur if there is overfilling of ventricles. So whenever there is overfilling of ventricles, that results in dilated chambers which do not pump effectively. So that again results in heart failure. So both these conditions result in heart failure. We all know a basic formula that cardiac output is equal to heart rate into stroke volume. Now, if this cardiac output is decreased, that means the person has heart failure. So the factors which affect heart failure and stroke volume will also affect cardiac output. So if stroke volume decreases, cardiac output also decreases, that results in heart failure. Now, stroke volume, it's affected in ischemic tissue, such as if there is ischemic myocardium, then that will not pump effectively, so stroke volume will decrease. It also depends on preload. Preload means end diastolic volume, and it also depends on afterload, that means arteriolar resistance. Now, end diastolic volume affects stroke volume as per Frank Starling law. If end diastolic volume decreases, then the force of contraction by heart also decreases, and thus stroke volume decreases. And afterload, that means arteriolar resistance, if it is high, then heart will not be able to pump effectively. Now we can consider a simple analogy. So if this is a slope and this is a person, say this person is analogous to heart. Now the person is carrying a load which can be considered as analogous to preload, and the person has to reach to the top. So that's a normal function, the demand which should be met. And the so this is the preload. If preload is increased, obviously the person will not able to do its job effectively, and this angle, that is slope, is the afterload. If we increase the afterload, again the person will not be able to climb up and meet the requirement. So in both these cases, the job of the person will not be effective, or in other words, in terms of heart, in terms if there is increase in preload or afterload, cardiac output will decrease. So heart failure, it can be the failure which occurs in the left side of heart, that's left heart failure or left ventricular failure, or right heart failure or right ventricular failure. So heart failure can occur either in the left side of heart or in the right side of heart. Now let us discuss the pathophysiology of left ventricular failure. Now, in order to understand left ventricular failure, let us consider this is the right side of the heart. So it's right atrium and this is right ventricle. Now let us draw left side of the heart. So I'm drawing left side of the heart a bit apart from this in order to have better understanding. So this is left atrium and this is the left ventricle. And let us say these are the two lungs. So these are two lungs, and this is trachea, these are the bronchi, and these are alveoli. Okay, now from right side of heart pumps blood into the pulmonary circulation. So this is the pulmonary trunk which emerges from the right ventricle. This pulmonary trunk divides into pulmonary arteries which supply blood to the lungs for oxygenation. So these are two pulmonary arteries. How inside the lungs, the blood gets oxygenated with the help of alveoli, and the oxygenated blood then goes through pulmonary veins to the left atrium of the heart. So eventually from left atrium it goes to left ventricle, from where it's pumped to all the tissues of the body. So this is the main circuit in between heart and lungs. So if there is failure of left ventricle, that means left ventricle will not be able to pump, and there will be accumulation of fluid in the left ventricle. So there will be increased fluid and increased pressure in the left ventricle, and as a result right atrium will not be able to pour its blood into the left ventricle. Left atrium will not be able to pump to left ventricle. So back pressure will go on rising. It will increase in the left atrium, then in the pulmonary veins, and eventually the pressure will increase in the pulmonary capillaries, which will result in leakage of fluid in the pulmonary tissue. So leakage of fluid will occur in the pulmonary tissue because of this back pressure due to left ventricular failure. Now this will be further exaggerated, because if right ventricle will be operating normally, it will push blood again to the pulmonary capillaries, so that will result in further increase in pressure. So initially there will be leakage of fluid in the interstitium of the lungs, resulting in interstitial edema, and when this fluid will go on increasing, then it will enter into the alveoli, resulting in alveolar edema. So when alveolar edema occurs, that makes the lungs wet and boggy, they become heavy, and there is difficulty in expansion of the alveoli, so the compliance decreases, and as a result there is difficulty in breathing and labored breathing. So this difficulty in breathing results in a condition called as dyspnea. So there is dyspnea, that is difficulty in breathing. And there will also, if we consider, let us say this is an alveoli, so there will be some fluid accumulated. Normally due to gravity it will be accumulated in the lower part of alveoli, the upper part will be dry and it will function normally, that's exchange of gases will occur. But if the person will lie down, this fluid will be redistributed and it will occupy more area of the alveoli, so the dyspnea will become more, it will get worsened on lying down, so it's known as orthopnea. And when the person sleeps, he will suddenly wake up and gasp for breath, that's called as paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. So these are the conditions which occur in case of pulmonary edema due to left ventricular failure. Another important thing that can occur, there will be, because of adenomatous inflammation of this mucosa in the respiratory tract, there will be dry cough, and there will also be crepitations which will be heard in the lower part of the lungs due to wet alveoli, because when wet alveoli expand, they expand with the sound which are known as creps or crepitations. Now, so this is the main problem with left ventricular failure. It results in pulmonary edema and pulmonary hypertension. Now let us have a discussion of right heart failure or right ventricular failure. Now, the most common cause of right ventricular failure is the left ventricular failure, because once left ventricular failure occurs, it results in pulmonary artery hypertension, which causes pulmonary congestion. Then there will be increase in there will be pulmonary artery hypertension, and right ventricle will not be able to pump blood against this high pressure, so it will result in right ventricular failure. However, so isolated right ventricular failure is very rare. Most of the times it occurs after left ventricular failure. So left ventricular failure leads to right ventricular failure, and the main complication is due to pulmonary hypertension. Because of pulmonary hypertension, there will be right ventricular failure. Now, right ventricular failure can also occur in other conditions other than left ventricular failure, which cause pulmonary hypertension. So pulmonary artery hypertension, if some condition causes pulmonary artery hypertension, that can also result in right ventricular failure. Now, these conditions include conditions such as pulmonary fibrosis. Pulmonary fibrosis can lead to pulmonary artery hypertension, and this pulmonary valve stenosis, etc. So these conditions result in right ventricular failure, and this right ventricular failure, which is caused due to other causes other than left ventricular failure, it's called as cor pulmonale. Now, if this is the right side of the heart, this is right atrium and right ventricle, and this is the left side of the heart, so this is left atrium and this is left ventricle. These are the two lungs. So these are the bronchi and these are lungs. Now this is the pulmonary trunk, pulmonary arteries, and these are pulmonary veins which go to the left atrium. Now, as we all know, right ventricle receives blood from superior vena cava, which is formed by the external jugular vein and the subclavian vein. So this is superior vena cava, and inferior vena cava also pours its blood into the right atrium, and inferior vena cava drains blood from the lower part of body, such as the major organs such as liver. So if this is liver, this inferior vena cava is going to drain blood from the liver. So these are the hepatic sinusoids, and this is the hepatic artery, and below here is the portal vein. So this is the portal vein. As we know, portal vein is formed by superior mesenteric vein and splenic vein. So this is spleen, and this vein is the splenic vein, and this is the splenic artery, and right here this is the superior mesenteric vein, which drains from the gastrointestinal tract, say from GI mucosa, etc. So this all this blood goes finally to the inferior vena cava, from where it's drained into the right atrium. So this portal vein, superior vena, this splenic vein, superior mesenteric vein, inferior vena cava. Now remaining there are various tributaries which drain blood from the lower part of the body. Now, if there is failure of the right ventricle, that means right ventricle will not be able to pump blood into the pulmonary circulation. So this will result in accumulation of fluid in the right ventricle, and there will be accumulation of fluid and increase in pressure in the right atrium, and back pressure will go on increasing. So there will be more amount of fluid present in external jugular vein, which will result in increased JVP. So there will be increased JVP. There will be more amount of fluid and more back pressure in the inferior vena cava, that will result in congestion of liver. So there will be congestive hepatomegaly. There will be more accumulation of fluid in the liver, and liver will enlarge. Similarly, spleen is going to enlarge, so there will be congestive splenomegaly. And because of edema in the GI mucosa, there will be irritation of GI mucosa. Now, because of this irritation or inflammation in the GI mucosa, there will be symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, and there will be pain in the abdomen region. These are complications which can be seen. Now, because of a congestion of all these organs, there will be leakage of fluid into the peritoneal cavity, resulting in ascites. So there will also be increase in pressure in the portal vein, that will result in portal vein hypertension. So this will result portal hypertension. So these are some common, and there will also be generalized edema, which will be more prominent in the lower part of body. So these are all the complications due to right ventricular failure or due to cor pulmonale, and this is the main right ventricular failure. Now, there are some other terms associated with heart failure which we must know. So let us have a discussion of systolic and diastolic failure. As we know, the normal ventricles, they should be able to relax properly. It means they should be compliant enough to receive enough end diastolic volume and to pump it out. Normal ventricles should also be able to contract and pump out the blood to maintain enough cardiac output. So this should be the function of a normal ventricle. Now, if due to some reason ventricle is not able to relax properly, so there will be decreased end diastolic volume. And whenever end diastolic volume decreases, as per Frank Starling law, the force of contraction due to heart also decreases, and there is decrease in cardiac output, which results in heart failure. Now, the heart, in some cases, heart will not be able to contract, so there will be decrease in cardiac output, and that will also result in heart failure. However, the first condition will be due to a defect in diastole, so it's known as diastolic failure, and the second condition will be due to defective systole, and this is called as systolic failure. The most common cause of systolic failure is ischemic heart disease. Now, the oxygen demand is less, so heart will not be able to contract, and diastolic failure can occur due to various reasons such as aortic stenosis, hypertension, or due to hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. Now, all these three conditions, they result in pathological hypertrophy of the left ventricle. So if this is the schematic representation of heart, this left atrium, left ventricle. Now, in all these cases, there will be pathological hypertrophy of the right ventricle of heart. Now, this hypertrophy will not be on the outer side, it will be on the inner side of the septum. So this will be, as a result, there will be decrease in the cavity of left ventricle. So less blood from left atrium can reach to the left ventricle, and as a result, due to a hypertrophied ventricle, the left atrium can apply some force in order to forcefully pump blood, and that will result in production of fourth heart sound, or S4. So the end diastolic volume here decreases, and it eventually results in diastolic heart failure. Again, due to less end diastolic volume, there will be less amount of cardiac output as per Frank Starling law, and the heart will not be able to meet enough requirements. And most common cause of systolic failure is ischemic heart disease. So now let us discuss forward failure and backward failure. So let us take an example. Say if this is the left side of the heart, this is left atrium, and this is left ventricle of heart. Now, left ventricle, it pumps out blood through aorta, and from aorta blood goes to various tissues of the body. So these are various tissues of the body, and these are various capillaries. Okay. Now, left atrium, it receives blood from the lungs. So the oxygenated blood, it goes from lungs to the left atrium, and the lungs themselves, they receive blood from the right side of the heart, which gets oxygenated in the lungs. So these are the pulmonary arteries, and this is the pulmonary trunk, which emerges from the right side of the heart. Now, whenever, let us say, there's failure of the left ventricle, so in case of failure of left ventricle, there will be tissue hypoperfusion. So less amount of blood will be able to go to the tissues, and as a result, there will be complications such as fatigue and cyanosis. So there will be decreased oxygen supply and decreased blood to peripheral tissues, resulting in complications such as fatigue and cyanosis. Now, these complications occur from a point which is distal to the point of origin of failure. So failure is at left ventricle, and the complications occur distal to this point. Similarly, if we go backwards, there will be pulmonary congestion, and that will result in complications such as dyspnea, dry cough, orthopnea, etc. Now, these complications occur from a point which is proximal to the failure. Now, complications such as fatigue and cyanosis, they occur distal to the point of failure, and hence they are said to be due to forward failure of left ventricle. And the complications such as dyspnea and cough occur proximal to the point of failure, and these complications are said to occur due to backward failure of the left ventricle. So, be it left ventricular failure or right ventricular failure, both of them have two components, that is forward failure and backward failure. Different complications are caused due to forward failure, and different complications are caused due to backward failure. So both of forward failure and backward failure, they are both components of the same type of heart failure. Now, whenever there is, say, left ventricular failure, Left ventricular failure can occur due to any cause, for example, due to an initial insult in the form of ischemia or myocardial infarction. So it has two components, forward failure and backward failure. Now, because of forward failure, there will be tissue hypoperfusion. So there will be decreased perfusion as a result of forward failure because of decrease in cardiac output. Now, this decreased perfusion is going to occur to all the tissues, including kidney. So there will be decreased renal perfusion, and whenever there is decreased renal perfusion, compensatory mechanisms come into action. As a result, there will be release of renin from the kidney, which will result in activation of RAS. And there will also be release of aldosterone, which will cause sodium and water retention in order to compensate for the decreased perfusion. So RAS will increase angiotensin second, and aldosterone will cause sodium and water retention. Similarly, as a result of decreased perfusion to the carotid sinus, there will be stimulation of central nervous system and there will be increased sympathetic outflow. Now, increased sympathetic outflow will be so that the functioning of heart can improve and the conditions can be compromised. Now, this is stimulation of central nervous system, and there will also be release of ADH. Now this release of ADH will cause water retention and vasoconstriction. So all these conditions, sodium water retention, angiotensin second, vasoconstriction, water retention, these conditions are meant to increase the cardiac output so that the functioning of heart can improve. So all these are conditions, these mechanisms occur in order to increase the cardiac output. These compensatory mechanisms are called as neurohumoral mechanisms, or they are called as neurohumoral activations. So these neurohumoral activations are nothing but simply they are compensatory mechanisms which occur as a result of a heart failure. Now these compensatory mechanisms initially after the heart failure they are useful, so because they help us to increase the cardiac output and the tissue perfusion can be maintained. However, if they occur in a chronic manner for a long time, they eventually will result in worsening of heart failure. The worsening of heart failure will occur because if these conditions occur for a long time, they will result in certain changes. For example, there will be altered genomic expression in the myocardial cells. So this will result in a synthesis of abnormal proteins, and these abnormal proteins will not be able to maintain enough tension in the wall of the myocardium. And decreased tension will decrease the pressure with which the myocardium will pump out the blood as per Laplace's law. There will also be apoptosis of myocardial cells. Now, the apoptosis of myocardial cells and other changes such as there will be fibrosis in the myocardial tissue and there will be left ventricular hypertrophy. Now, because of these all change, they are together called as cardiac remodeling. So, if these compensatory or neurohumoral activation mechanisms last for a long time, they will result in cardiac remodeling, and cardiac remodeling will cause worsening of heart failure, and this will decrease cardiac output significantly, and it will finally result in mortality. So now let us try to understand this with the help of a graph. So if we draw a graph between cardiac output and end diastolic volume. So let us say on x-axis we represent end diastolic volume and on y-axis we represent the cardiac output. So the curve which I'm going to draw is the curve of a normal functioning heart. So this is a curve of a normal heart, and our normal heart in a normal person at rest functions at this point, which is named as point A. So at this point, the cardiac output will be almost 5 liters and end diastolic volume will be almost 130 ml. So this is point A. This is the point where normal heart functions at rest. Now, in patients of heart failure, when the heart failure occurs, their heart initially operates at another point. So there is shift in this curve in the patients of heart failure, and the heart now operates at point B. And diastolic volume remains same. However, the cardiac output decreases. Now, say it's only 2 liters. So this occurs in the patients of heart failure at point B, but before compensatory mechanisms are occurred. So this at point B, the heart which operates is called as uncompensated heart. It means heart failure has occurred, however, compensatory mechanisms have not yet been activated. Now, after compensatory mechanisms are activated, the functioning of heart to some extent they improve. So there is somewhat increase in the cardiac output after compensatory mechanisms. There will also be increase in end diastolic volume because compensatory mechanisms will keep on increasing the body fluid volume and thus increasing end diastolic volume. So initially they will improve the condition of the person. Now the cardiac output will be slightly increased and end diastolic volume will also be slightly increased. So this will be better for the person. So this at this point the heart is said to be a compensated heart. However, if these compensatory mechanisms go on, they will finally result in cardiac remodeling and end diastolic volume will be increased to a very large extent, and heart will now start operating at point D, which will further decrease the cardiac output. And if compensatory mechanisms will go on, this will further keep cardiac output decreasing and decreasing, and eventually eventually it will result in mortality. So this, at this point, the heart is, it's called as decompensated heart. And this results in development of a vicious cycle, because end diastolic volume will increase, cardiac output will decrease. After another cycle, end diastolic volume will further increase and cardiac output will keep on decreasing. So this vicious cycle will ultimately cause death of the person. Now, the aim of treatment in heart failure is to decrease the end diastolic volume, so that we can shift the curve from point D to a point towards the left side of the curve. Okay, so after giving drug therapy, the end diastolic volume will decrease and cardiac output will increase to some extent. So the heart will start operating at point E after giving drug therapy. So this will be better for the patient and it will decrease mortality. So that's the aim of drug therapy. We have to decrease the end diastolic volume and increase the cardiac output. End diastolic volume can be decreased by decreasing the total body fluid volume. That's by decreasing volume. So we can use diuretics, etc., and we can use venodilators to decrease end diastolic volume. Cardiac output can be increased by using inotropic drugs, so which will increase the force of contraction of the heart. So drugs which are used in heart failure. So in heart failure, first the drugs that we use are to treat the pulmonary hypertension, or to treat pulmonary edema or pulmonary congestion, and then we use drugs to increase cardiac output, or inotropic drugs. So we'll discuss these drugs in detail in the next section.